Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Hannah Crapone. I'm the Content Marketing Manager here at Certiport. We're so happy to have you joining us for our second Autodesk Academy webinar this afternoon. Now, this presentation is being recorded, so you'll notice that you are on mute. If you have any questions, I will enable the chat here shortly. You're welcome to drop those into either the chat or the Q&A feature, and we'll make sure to have Craig, our lovely presenter, address those at the end of our presentation. Now, today we are discussing how and why to incorporate Autodesk Fusion 360 into your curriculum, and we'll be learning from Mr. Craig Hughes. Craig is an engineering and technology education teacher teaching Project Lead the Way engineering courses at Batesville High School in Batesville, Indiana. He has been teaching at BHS for 13 years and has been working with Project Lead the Way for 9 years as a master teacher, training teachers to teach their introduction to engineering design and civil engineering and architecture courses. In both of those courses, Craig uses Autodesk products such as Inventor, Fusion 360, AutoCAD, and Revit to create, prototype, and document design solutions. He's an Autodesk Certified User for Fusion 360, Inventor, AutoCAD, and Revit. Craig is an alumnus of Purdue University, and we were just talking about the lamp that you can see behind him repping his alma mater, and Ball State University, which has led him to his passion for teaching both in the classroom and on his YouTube channel, where he provides tutorials and help for Project Lead the Way students and teachers. He enjoys learning new things and building his skills to be a better educator, and we're very privileged to have him here for this wonderful session. So without further ado, Craig, I will go ahead and pass it over to you to get us started.
All right. Thank you, Hannah. I appreciate the intro. And so, yeah, it's one of those things that, yes, I do represent, obviously, Purdue University. And so it's one of the things that when we're online, I usually get kind of, a little bit of some comments about some of the things. So I usually enjoy that. So, all right, I'll go ahead and share screen here. And I'll go ahead and make sure I have my slides ready to go. Let me switch my.
Craig, I think that's put us in a little bit of the behind the scenes mode. If you want, there we go. Perfect.
So,
awesome.
Yeah,
that's great.
I got a dual monitor set up, so that's why.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, so yeah, this afternoon it was one of the things I feel very fortunate to go through and be asked to go through and just talk about a little bit about my classroom implementation with Fusion 360. Fusion 360, I think, is a fantastic product. It's constantly being looked at. It's constantly being updated. It's constantly being, adding new features in and just providing a lot of opportunities, I think, for teachers. So recently, I was just within the last couple of weeks down at the Project Lead the Way Summit in, down in Orlando, Florida, and we had a bunch of sessions. And so we actually had some individuals from Autodesk. And it was really cool. I sat in on a lot of the sessions, and there were some things that I learned and picked up from some of the sessions that I think are just going to continue for me to expand, kind of my knowledge and the implementation in the classroom. So this is one of the things that I think is really cool. And as we go along with, looking at trying to provide and resources for teachers and just talk about it a little bit, but also just be good colleagues and just talk to people and be able to say, hey, how can we incorporate this, and how can we make this a really smooth transition in some cases, or a first time implementation for those teachers, and how can it be learning some of those tips and tricks that kind of make life hopefully a little bit easier as you start to use Fusion in the classroom. So first off, I always kind of go through, they said, when I looked at the title, it's like the how and the why. And so the why of Fusion 360 that I kind of go through as I talk about, it's integrated computer-aided design, computer-aided manufacturing, and computer-aided engineering all in one software. So whereas some softwares you need to kind of go through have extensions or maybe some sort of other software involved, Fusion's able to do a lot of that kind of right there in one package. So I think that's one benefit that, as we saw in a lot of people, as we sat in a lot of the sessions, we're like, kind of looked, and as the presenters talked even at our session down in Florida, was that, it's like, okay, I kind of see the benefit of where we're kind of going with Fusion 360 and why we would make a change. Because we do have some people that are pretty, if you're a kind of established CAD user, you are working definitely with like Autodesk Inventor. And believe me, I was an Inventor trained person. So very much, that was my first CAD program, and Inventor still is a very, very near and dear to my heart, so to speak, as we go along. And so, yeah, it was one of those things that when we went to make the switch over, it was kind of like, do I want to, what am I getting into? What are some of the things that I have to deal with? And so, after a while, and then, when I kind of made the switch and kind of learned about all the benefits and saw what it could do in the classroom. And I even had some of my colleagues that, some of them I'll name throughout this presentation, that, they went through and they're like, why did we move away from Inventor, and why was this? And I had one, he's a good friend of mine. Some of you may have heard of him, Corey Duzan. So, and he's based around Chicago area. And so he's another Project Lead the Way master teacher. And he says, why did we switch? And he was not really all in on Fusion at the beginning. And I just said, hold on, give it time, and kind of, you'll start to see. And then eventually it was kind of funny. It was, me kind of going from talking him kind of off the ledge to then going through and him saying, well, at one point he says, Craig, I get it. I understand why. Why we're moving in this direction, and I can see the benefits and how good it is in the classroom, especially as you go to implement it. So one of the big implementation pieces of why I moved forward with it is it has compatibility with both Windows and Mac operating system. So that was one of the things at my school. We are all Apple computers, MacBook Airs is what all of our students have. So before, I have a dedicated computer lab with all desktop computers, and so all the work that we did had to be done in class. And anytime that students didn't get something done, we had to find maybe sometimes some creative ways to try to get their work completed and things like that. So we do have a dedicated like study hall, or what we call student resource time. But even then, sometimes some of those can kind of become a little limited as students miss classes from other times and from other classes, and then they don't really have a whole lot of time to be coming in all the time to dedicate to use your computer. We're able to run that on a Mac operating system, which is pretty cool, and I go through and actually download that with all of my students on their MacBook Airs. So, as well as having cloud storage, it reduces the cost of the computers to run the software. So compared to some other CAD programs, as well as, for my students, it allowed them access from home. So when students were absent, they were able to, when they say, hey, what did I miss? I can say, model these parts or these components at home, and then come in and we're able to go through and kind of get some of that. And then also built-in collaboration tools. So it was one of the things that we're able to do a little bit utilizing Fusion team collaboration, working together. And as this summer, there was some new updates that came to Fusion team. And so I'll be honest, that's something that I'm still playing around with and still working on. So and still gaining and learning on my knowledge of those collaboration tools. And I think there's going to be some really cool opportunities that come from that, coming in the future. So as Fusion 360 continues to evolve and continues to get better, so with a lot of its functionalities and things like that. So that's some of the reasons from my standpoint of why I would go through to use Fusion 360. And so, and the best part is sometimes we do get some questions about like, hey, I learned Inventor, I'm a SolidWorks user, I learned another CAD program, why do I want to learn? It's like one, why do I want to learn a new CAD program? Or, there's some teachers that, they're like, I don't, I'm a little bit uneasy about getting into that. And so what you'll find, I think, is if you're a previous CAD user, you're going to see a lot of the same kind of things translate over well. So, and just like for me, I was an Inventor user. I had to at one time teach a course with SolidWorks, and those kind of go through and little different places where buttons are, but a lot of the reason for that is once you learn it, then it's like, oh, okay, I start to see the parallels in those different commands. So all right, so a little bit about at least for our implementation. So just to give you a little bit of a background of kind of where I'm at. So like Hannah said, so I'm at Batesville High School. We're based in Batesville, Indiana. So that's about halfway between Indianapolis and Cincinnati, right along I-74. And so we're right off the interstate there. And so we have a 4-year Project Lead the Way engineering program. So to where, for the most part, I teach the courses, and then I do have a colleague that helps out with teaching some of the overflow when we have a lot of students sign up that teaches the Introduction to Engineering Design course. But I also teach Principles of Engineering, as well as Civil Engineering and Architecture and Engineering Design and Development. And then actually we are exploring, which is really I'm actually anticipating it's going to be the case, is we're going to be adding computer integrated manufacturing, or the SIM course, for next school year. And with that, it's going to me, I think I'm really excited about adding that course, because I'm planning on implementing Fusion 360 in there as well, and getting into a workspace that I'm not as familiar with. And I'll be honest to go through and to say that. So as the manufacturer workspace is one that I'm not as prevalent in, I've not played around in as much. And so I'm kind of excited to expand my knowledge and get into that kind of area of it, and kind of see what we can start creating and doing with a lot of our students. So BHS is a Certiport authorized testing center. So we do offer, right now as it stands, we have 3 Autodesk certification user exams we provide to BHS seniors. So usually we kind of wait till the senior year, just because all of our exams are paid for. Our local education foundation, the Batesville Community Education Foundation, pays for all of our students on their exam vouchers, so that way they can earn the certification. So it's one benefit that we provide to the high school seniors. And so we provide Fusion 360, Inventor, and Revit. And so the Inventor piece has been because actually my seniors right now are my last group of students that were Inventor trained. So because Project Lead the Way utilized Autodesk Inventor since its inception for intro to engineering design, and then 2 years ago in 2020 they decided that we're going to switch to Fusion 360, and a lot of those benefits they were noted were the ones that I also kind of threw up on the slide previously. And so we saw that shift to Fusion, and I went ahead and just decided that I was going to go and make that transition as well. And so far it's been a really good transition and things like that. So we're still offering Inventor, and I'm still kind of exploring maybe some ways to still work in Inventor in places. And so, like we said, I do use AutoCAD a little bit. We don't have like an AutoCAD or CAD course to be able to teach more extensively with AutoCAD, but I do use with my students to show them how to use AutoCAD and some basic functions to do some like laser cutting and prototyping for some of those applications. So AutoCAD's a really great program, but we just don't have enough time, or students have enough space to go through and kind of work in AutoCAD in there. And then Revit we use in the Civil Engineering and Architecture course. So those are the ones that we offer to our seniors. And so last year we had about 20 seniors so graduate with at least, they had 2 Autodesk Certified User exam certifications. And so we were able to really provide a really great benefit to those students. And it's been interesting to hear back from some of them, especially as we're starting to get to the holidays. I'm starting to get more emails from those students that were seniors, and some of them may have been visiting. So it's really cool to see that impact as we come back. They're talking about what they've learned, and how, because of the things we learned in our classes, that they're definitely feeling like they're kind of ahead of the curve with some of the other kind of peers they have in some of their college courses. So it's been really refreshing and very very humbling to go through and to see that that's been a good impact on them. So just kind of give you a little bit of kind of how I incorporate Fusion 360. So we started in the 9th grade with Introduction to Engineering Design. In that course, we focus a lot on design process, as well as building, sketching, visualization, modeling skills. My kind of ideas every time I go through to look at this is I always like to get students started. I like to start with objects that have simple geometry. And so from there, you kind of lay out maybe a pathway as you kind of think about what are some things you want students to be able to do, or as you start gathering, because there's a lot of times where I go through and I gather projects or activities or ideas for things. And I start to kind of go through and break this down and be like, okay, what exactly do students need to be able to model this or to use Fusion to create some of these things? And so kind of almost thinking of with the end in mind, I kind of go through that process of saying, okay, they need to know how to do, they need to really know their sketching and skills pretty well in Fusion. And then they need to know these commands to be able to do some of these things. And that's kind of the process I take through it. So, and I use a lot of instructional videos to help teach a lot of the commands, the use of it, and also some of the workflow. So as the year progresses, though, I tend to go through and start to kind of scale back how much of that video instruction that's kind of, it's very much at the beginning of you do this, and they follow along. And if they follow along, they're able to create, what it is that I'm asking them to create in Fusion. But as the year goes on, I start to scale that back, because after a while, they don't need a video to be able to do some of those things. And eventually toward the about three quarters of the way through the year, eventually it's just giving them something that says, here, I need you to model this and I need you to create this. And so, and I always kind of tell my students, my big thing, and as I presented down at the PLTW Summit, I said, I always tell my students that we're going to get to the point where you don't need me anymore. And so the funniest part is when I have students that kind of look at me, and I had one say that last year. They said, "Oh, Mr. Hughes, well, we still need you." Like, and I'm like, well, thank you for the emotional support. But the thing is it's like, but my goal is that I want to go through and get to the point where, you don't necessarily need me to be able to go through and do some of these things, that I should be able to give you something and say, here you go. This is what I want you to be able to do. And they're able to do it and be able to do that. And so we try to go through and use Fusion 360 throughout the rest of the courses throughout our engineering program. And so even within civil engineering and architecture, so that one we use Revit quite a bit, but it's actually a featured project that I'll show. Well, I still do every year, like it'll be right after Thanksgiving. I do an ornament design project. And so they have to design, they get the opportunity to design an ornament of their choosing. And so they'll go through that. And so it just works better to use Fusion. It also refreshes their skills, because after they've used Revit for so in the year, they kind of come back to it and they're like, oh yeah, it's kind of like riding a bike. They feel like they need to go through and kind of come back on some of that. So, but it's really good to go through and see what they can come up with. So as far as some things there, tips and suggestions, here's probably some of my biggest kind of things that I do. And especially as I train teachers, these are things that I always recommend, is that when you are looking to implement Fusion 360 or work at creating some things, to me, you want to pick modeling activities and projects that interest students. And I think that's where all of us as teachers really go through and, we know that. And I think there's some times where you can go through and know just from one group of students, maybe from one year to the next, we want to go through and pick things that are going to interest kids. So not only that are going to be educational, but where they're engaged and they're going to have fun, Also, I say pick activities and projects they can make. So if you have the ability to do some fabrication and actually have it where when they design it in Fusion, can they actually build it, or can we actually prototype it? That's where kids really see the benefit of, I think, in the buy-in of Fusion 360, is that, in learning that computer program of, hey, anything I think of, I can design it and then I can create it. And it becomes part of our life in the world. So again, I kind of noted this, think about the progression of skills that you need. I utilize a lot of recorded videos to teach the skills and concepts. So those are the types of things, either you can look for ones that are online. So I have a YouTube channel that has, to plug my YouTube channel, not only to do that as well, but I have a lot of stuff out there. There's also, you're going to see a lot of other names that I'm going to provide to you that are really great, where if you are not, you're kind of like, and one reason that I hear is that I have some teachers that I talked to down when we were at the PLTW summit, and they said, I'm starting, now I've been teaching this for a few years. I'm starting to get to the point where, okay, I'm going to start making my own videos. And I said, that is fantastic. That's what I want to hear, is that, my stuff can be things that are there just to kind of help you get started, or when you first start teaching a class and it's all brand new to you, and it's a lot. Anytime you have to teach a brand new class, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort. And so sometimes just having something to refer to and have students refer to without you having to create it all the time can be very helpful. So I think the other thing too is, don't feel like you have to be the expert. I think a lot of times if you think that, moving to a brand new CAD program or starting to work with Fusion 360, don't feel like you have to know everything about it and that you have to show the kids every single thing that they need to know about it. So they will go through, and we've had discussions, and last night I had some discussions with some teachers that they said, yeah, they're figuring out as they go along, they're looking things up as they're working, or they will play around and kind of figure out what are some of the different things that they can do. And then what they end up doing is we start to build this culture in the classroom of, hey, that's really cool. Can you show someone else or help someone else with that particular, skill that they need help with? Because usually it's, 20 or 25 of, most of the time it's like 25. It's like there's 25 students in the room. There's one of me. And so we start to build that what I call a community of, help the person next to you. If you hear someone struggling, what to do, help them and be able to do that. And the kids are teaching each other and showing each other the things they're learning. And so that's really one of the best things that you can do. And I think as well, don't be afraid to let students show you what they learn. The reality of with working with Fusion and everything, as you look to incorporate it, is that students, when they get done, they go home. And if they have access to Fusion 360 at home, they're going to play with it at home, and they're going to figure out things. They're going to look up things because they have the time. And so a lot of times with us as adults, we have families to take care of. We have to come home, we have to cook dinner, we have to run practices, we have to go through and take care of kids, get them to bed, all that kind of stuff. So, that's not, we don't always have the same amount of time like some of our students to be able to do some of those things. And so when a student comes in and they say, hey, I'll, look at what I did, or look at what I kind of, worked on, or something like that, or did you know about this? Don't be afraid to let them go through and show, put them up on the projector and say, show us how you did that. And so there's a lot of things that it can be learned, and as much as you go through and try to, you want to be kind of the bearer of all knowledge and kind of be the person that, is the expert. There's a lot of great things that kids can go through and show you how they learn. And I think too, when kids see that when you go through and try to problem solve in a program, and if you don't know the answer right away, they mimic you as far as when they watch how you problem solve and fix things, and how you try to find the issues and how to provide some solutions. So, I think it's really good. A lot of what we're trying to teach them is problem solving and trying to troubleshoot and trying to, figure out some of the issues and go through there. My last few there, I'll go through, say, build your connections, find other teachers that are using Fusion 360 and collaborate. I think that's one of the biggest things. It's one of the best parts to me about being part of the Project Lead the Way network, is that I've got people that, when I'm having trouble with something or I need a question answered, I can pick up the phone or I can text someone and say, hey, are you seeing this problem too? Or are you having this issue? Or I'll email somebody and say, here, I'm trying to do this. Do you see a better way to handle it? Because this is where I'm kind of stuck. And vice versa. There's people that call me. And so we can collaborate, and, more heads that are better than one. And so, I always say, I know they say two heads, but to me, sometimes it takes more than two. So to me, I always say more heads are better than one in this case, because sometimes it takes a few calls to different people to go through and to kind of get some answers. And so it's really cool to have that there. Build your resources, have a variety of them. I'm going to share some different ones that I use and have used in the past. So that way, if you want to go through and use some of those, by all means, you can use them, but there could be some other ways too. Practice skills daily. One thing we tell all of our teachers is that when we go through training, that when you're learning Fusion 360, just try to go through and make things that are right kind of like around in your space. Try to model the dinner plate that you ate on that evening, or on the, for breakfast that morning, or, model a coffee cup, or, just practice it every day. If you're going through and you're a new user and, kind of feel like you need to build your skills, try to model something, even if it's basic, something every day to go through and try to, or at least somewhat, daily. So then that way you're still building your skills. And then probably the last and the most important, I think, that we always tell everybody in our trainings is be patient with yourself. Is that, it's new, and we've had some social media discussions that, computer aided design is not easy. And it's one of those things that as you learn it, it definitely becomes more intuitive, and it takes time. So usually I always tell teachers that, give it a few years to go through and really kind of implement and think about how that's going to go, and kind of go through some things. So those are some of my tips and suggestions. Those are the big ones that I kind of go through and say, and kind of tell anybody who's new, or maybe, kind of looking at making a transition from a CAD program to another. To me, all those things kind of go through and work together. And also, if you're an existing CAD user, what I did is I went through and I took some projects I used to do with Inventor, and I did them in Fusion. And so I would try to see the comparisons as I went along. So that was kind of what I tried to do. So how I kind of select activities and projects, I think the biggest thing is, from a standpoint, is one, can you go through and pick things that students have interest in? When it comes down to it, students have background and interest in toys, food, sports, movies and TV, video games. So those are the kind of the big five that I always go through and try to look at, is if I kind of create a project, can we create something within their interest, and does it still teach the skills that they need to know, or the skills that we're trying to work with. So there are some activities, some projects and things that are out there that are very engineering based, and it just goes through and, kids don't get, they're not really familiar with that kind of stuff. So, it's a little bit of something. It's like, can I pick something that they're going to be a little bit more engaged in, especially my younger students. So especially my freshmen. The other question is can or do you have access to fabrication tools? So, is it through traditional manufacturing processes? Do we have 3D printers? Do we have laser cutting, engraving? Do you have some manufacturing machines like CNC mills, routers, or lathes? And, can you go through and maybe look at fabricating some of those tools and everything, or using those tools, to fabricate some of those design solutions? Kids love the design and make aspect of a lot of our classes. And so that's what we kind of work with. But also, there's some times where I say, look for resources and learn from your resources that will engage students. So I put a little picture down there. I actually found this video. I've not done this project because I haven't had too much interest that I've seen yet, but I about bet in some cases we could do, in a lot of years, I could have done a lightsaber design project and had a lot of engagement and a lot of things there. So, this is just one. So the source was J Makes 3D on YouTube. So if you search, J Makes 3D, and you'll find that video and everything. So we had one that some teachers that I'm training right now, they modeled chess set pieces. So they had some kids in their classes that they would get a chance to make some custom chess set pieces and things of that nature. So a lot of different projects and things like that can be used. So now I will say there's not everything is always driven by student interest. So I'm not going to go through and make it sound like that, I'm always kind of, always have, kind of looking to cater to, their interests or anything, because sometimes when it comes down to it, it's like you just kind of have to teach sometimes some concepts and things like that. So there's a lot of concepts, like, for example, multi-view drawing. I will go through and model some things, and I use that to 3D print some items and use it as teaching aids to help with, developing spatial visualization skills. And, like down here at the bottom, this is for manufacturing processes, kind of a conceptual idea of them making, different types of holes in a block, and using that whole command to be able to learn how to do that. And then I do have a 3D printed block that I do to show, because sometimes even though we model it, I've found that kids don't always kind of make the connection of what exactly that they're doing. So when I show them that whole block and they get to see the actual, holes, and then I have some actual fasteners that you can put in there, and they kind of understand. It's like, oh, that's what we were doing. That's what we were making. So I use a lot of those kind of teaching aids and everything like that. But some of my real popular ones that I'll say that I kind of do, a lot of my classroom examples is I have this one here. I do this one's actually, I'm getting ready to start tomorrow in my class. So believe it or not, it's pretty topical. And I don't know how good a timing I have considering we just got through Halloween, but I do a candy modeling activity where I purchase 6 different types of candy. I buy the kind of the mini Tootsie Rolls, Lifesaver candy, the Dum Dum suckers, the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup, Red Vine or Twizzlers, and then the last one is going to be Ring Pop. And so what we do is all the kids get one of those pieces of candy each, and then they will actually take a dial caliper. First, I have them sketch it as far as what would be the best front view, what would be the top view, and in a lot of cases, and in some scenarios, we don't always need all 3 views, and then they're going to try to sketch an isometric view. And then from there, they will 3D model that candy, and then they will, sometimes do drawings and document what that is. And so it kind of reinforces some skills with, some of the engineering concepts that we have. And then obviously our kids enjoy it because they get to consume the candy after it's all done. So, but they will go through and do some sketching and measuring, and do some CAD modeling and learn some new CAD modeling skills to be able to do some of that. So with the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup, I do go through and show some advanced skills like, shell and circular pattern with all the little ridges around on the outside, and as well as going through and doing that. And I can't take credit for this idea. I'm going to tell you right now, this is one that I do that my kids love. This is one that I got from Corey Duzan. So he started this first, and he showed it to me, and I was like, that's really cool. So this was in place of modeling a screwdriver case. So the screwdriver case, I tried that the first year, and kids didn't really get into it. They didn't really engage in it. It wasn't very exciting. It wasn't as kind of, I could tell they weren't quite having as much fun. So I looked for things that had the same kind of like CAD modeling skills they needed to have. And in that screwdriver case, they needed things like shell. They needed things like circular pattern. And so I started to look for, okay, well, what are some things that, that I can pick that would be more fun, that would use some of those skills. So, and this is what I kind of landed on. And obviously I got it from the help of some of my resources. I do also a 3D illusion lamp project. This is a very popular one that I do with the kids. So this is those LED lighted acrylic lamps. And so this is this is the Batesville Bulldog logo, our Bulldogs logo. And so I buy the bases from Amazon, which I know sometimes, again, this is not necessarily, could be something that, you'll have to look into, funding and purchasing and everything like that. And what you can see, you can do. It also requires a laser cutter. So I just go through and like to show just some different things. And so to me, I love using the laser cutter and using Fusion 360 to do it. It does require, right now as it stands, I know Fusion's getting ready to, they're putting out updates. But for this particular project, I do have to usually use AutoCAD to go through and to export a drawing, and then just color the lines a different color, just because the particular, I use the Glowforge laser, and the Glowforge tends to go through and need different colors to go through and to assign the different processes to be able to cut and score and things like that. So, so for right now, until, as Fusion goes through and continues to update, and they do have some ability now to change line colors, they go through and, we'll go through that kind of process. But I usually give them a size. They have to have the tab at the bottom. So I give them the size of what they have to make that. And then I do make them do an assembly, and then I make them do drawings and documentation, which I kind of put down the right side of the slide there. And so for a lot of their designs, I don't go too crazy as far as dimensioning goes, but enough so that way they can kind of, they're getting the habit of like, oh, we need we're going to do a cover page. We're going to have an assembly drawing, and then we're going to have individual part drawings for the parts that we're going to have in our design. So, and then they will send me their files to laser cut, and we laser cut them out of 1/8 inch thick acrylic, and we put them down, and we give it to them, and the kids really enjoy it because it's one of their first projects that they kind of get. I'm like, okay, here's the size constraints. You can make what you want. So not all the kids make this bulldog. This is just the one that I use as an example. This was mine that I test run with when I was creating this project. And so, I've had a lot of kids pick a lot of sports teams, football teams, do a lot of stuff with different movies and TV shows and things like that. And so obviously my asterisk on every project is that it has to be school appropriate. So, but it's really a fun one and the kids enjoy, and it's something they get to take home, which is usually a big sell, and it really helps to kind of engage your kids, and they love it. I also do one with, this is an old Project Lead the Way project that was model a miniature train. So usually this is one that's based upon going through, and they're given these, like the first picture up there, you can see there's a train body. So they get given some dimensions and they have to model based upon those isometric views. They get there should be 9 parts in total, and they get given those, they are given those drawings of the isometric view with all the dimensions, and then they have to try to model those. Now, I do provide some of the ones that are more complicated. So the train body, I provide some videos to help them with modeling those with some of the harder parts. So there are, I think, 4 parts that are really advanced that I want them to, it's a kind of a skill building project. And then as they get to the more simpler parts, like there's a little hitch magnet on the back that's just really, it would just be 2 circles and then you just extrude and that's it. And so I'm like, you don't need a video on that. And I always get my kids that'll say that they'll say, oh, are there videos for that part? And I'm like, no, you can do that now, and so we always have those different things there. But a lot of that skill building project, we're still doing drawings. I got a little GIF image there of the train running forward and backward. So we also do a little bit with motion in that project as well, just showing the kids how to create motion, and we have it run up and down on a track. And then the biggest takeaway is the kids are learning how to document an advanced design in the form of drawings. And so you can kind of see, there's my example of that train body drawing. So is that they have to go through and create those. So, and usually those harder parts, the ones that are more complicated, I give them the drawings and I say, here you go. I want these 4 parts have to look exactly like this. And it's more about them learning how to use some of the commands in Fusion, like whole notes and changing precision on dimensions in the drawing environment, adding drawing notes and things like that, making sure you have center marks and center lines on all of things. And so that's kind of where, to me, that's a big project to kind of do that. And so, and then I kind of grade them on the simpler parts. I kind of leave it up to them. So again, this is about the time of the year where I start to kind of scale back how much support and how much kind of what I would consider kind of hand-holding for my students as they kind of go forward. I do one in Principles of Engineering. So this is one of the ones where they have to design a truss bridge. So I have this problem statement where we end up having the Indiana Department of Transportation is consulting engineers for the design of a new bridge. The community through public forum, a lot of the residents are concerned about the new bridge as far as how it's going to look. It's kind of a historic kind of tourism kind of area, and they have to create a model bridge design that's functional, safe, structural efficient, and it also should be aesthetically pleasing. So they design this all in Fusion. So they usually start off with, there's some of the constraints that I give them as far as, what it works with. I do 1/8 inch material, but we laser cut these. So I kind of call this the Bridge Project 2.0 because we not only, because they do this at our middle school in Batesville. And so it's very much of, they sketch it out and then they draw it and then they cut. And then once they have that, they use the drawings to cut their pieces and they assemble the bridge together. And so to me, I call it Bridge 2.0 because they're kind of doing the same thing, but this time they're using CAD to kind of help with a lot of that. And then we do some things like, so the picture down there on the bottom right is a static stress simulation. So it's the first time for our sophomores, they've played around with this environment. And even though Fusion doesn't have really support for a lot of wood material yet in that simulation environment, I still have them do it with steel because they can actually see and try to be able to look at, like, what are the members that are really going to have a lot of stress on them, and they can predict, probably where their breakages are going to be. but we laser cut the bridges and then we glue them up and then we actually test them. I have a tester, a bridge tester, and we'll actually go through and break them. And so the kids get really excited about, their test bridge day. And I always tell them it's my favorite day because I didn't do any of the work, but yet I get to break your projects. So they usually kind of laugh and look at me like I'm terrible, but that's just kind of, I just tell them, I'm just being honest. It's fun to be able to break your projects, and I didn't have to do any of the work for it. So, but they really enjoy seeing and comparing, and we kind of make it a little bit of a classroom competition to look at the efficiency. And one of the last kind of ones that's very popular, especially as we're getting around, I kind of save this the last because of the time of the year. So again, you'll kind of see on mine, I said you can use this in Fusion 360 or Autodesk Inventor. So again, kind of keep in mind, I had some, my seniors are still kind of Inventor trained. They're still kind of tied to Inventor pretty well. And so that's why I kind of leave that as an option for them. But for the majority of all my students, they're going to use Fusion 360 to design an ornament of some sort. And so I give them some constraints. So I usually do 4 inches by 4 inches and then no thicker than 1/4 of an inch, which kind of keeps students from designing the sphere shaped kind of ornaments, because otherwise when you do that with a 3D printer, that tends to get into like 3 or 4 hours of printing. And so I really don't have that time, especially as we come back from Thanksgiving and trying to get all those done before we leave for our holiday break, in December. I really don't have that. So, but there's a couple of a few examples that I've had, and ones that I show pictures for students. And so the one there on the right of the penguin, that's actually one that's been 3D printed, and she ended up going through and painting that with some acrylic paint. And that's how it turned out. So, and went through and made some of those. So it was a really good one and a great student that had a great example. All right, so as we kind of end out, I know I'm kind of been watching the time and everything, make sure we give times for question and answers. So here's some of the resources that I use. These are some ones here. I believe all of the slides have been shared out, and or if we need to, I can always share these out. But I use a lot of internet website resources. A lot of these, I'll be honest, are off of YouTube. So a lot of these, especially the first three, are all three gentlemen that I know pretty well that use Fusion 360, and they have a lot of cool ideas that are different than mine a lot of times. So, if you feel free to go through and look at some of their stuff and be able to see how much you incorporate Fusion into your classroom. But from the rest of the list, we get down into some companies that use Fusion 360. So NYC CNC has a lot of great tutorials that I've learned from and I've used in some courses that I've taught, that I used to teach at our community college, our local community college. And I used some, especially in there when I had to teach about sheet metal. So that was one that at the time I was not very familiar with, and I used a lot of their tutorials to kind of understand that better, and used a couple of their projects just to go through and kind of demonstrate. And it was a really great tutorial. But some of those others, some of them are Autodesk, Fusion 360, but Product Design Online. Tyler Beck of Tech and Espresso actually has some very great tutorials on like how do you do things better in Fusion. So I watch a lot of his videos just because I'm looking at, okay, well, now that I know how to do it, how do I be more efficient in it? And what are some of the like mistakes that a lot of first timers make or beginning users? And so he does a really great job of being able to show a lot of those off. So, but feel free to check out some of those. I'll be honest, I'm another guy that I use not only a lot of internet sources, but I have some printed books, print media that I've used. The book that is listed first, The Power Guide for Beginners and Intermediate Users, hands down, probably one of the best books that I've used to learn Fusion 360. And so the CAD Artifacts is the company that they have a companion website. So as well, that'll go through and provide you with some, you can register as an instructor and get some resources that way. And then SDC Publications does have some books on Fusion 360 that you can kind of look at. So, but all those links will take you there. And so those are all my resources and things that I look to when especially as I'm building my knowledge and my skills and looking for different ways to do things and to get different ideas. So I wanted to just share that out with everybody as well. And then last, as I look at in and out pretty much on time here. So this is my contact information. So feel free to go through and, contact me. That's my work email address. So I have one of those lovely education email addresses that really go through and, kind of lengthen out the wording as you go through and talk about that. So, but feel free to contact me. And then I do have a work phone there. So I don't know how much I can be able to be available through the normal school day, but if I get left a voicemail, I'm sure I could be able to go through and answer you. But likewise, I'll plug the YouTube channel. I know sometimes we've had some questions on that. So there's the link there. And so if you're kind of looking for some different ideas or just some, help on some things, feel free to kind of look and see if there's anything on there that might interest you or might be of use to you.
Greg, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for going through all of this with us. We've had a few questions come through on the chat that I just wanted to address. First one that came through, do you ultimately have students 3D print their Fusion 360 models, and how often?
That can vary, as far as, a lot of it kind of depends on some of the projects and things like that. I don't know necessarily I'll 3D print every single thing. I'll be honest, I do a puzzle cube project. So every student, when they do a puzzle cube, they have 5 different parts. That's a lot of printing. So, and it's a lot, and it's kind of time consuming. So, the kids asked, they said, are we going to 3D print these? And I'm like, no, but we got some other projects we'll 3D print. And so I'll do some things like if we have like a name tag or a book bag tag, I'll do a design project where they will make one that they put on their computer bag for school. And so they get a little bit there. And so that one there is a little bit more doable, not as much time and material. Yeah. So, that's a great question. That's, how much do you do? And I think ultimately you got to kind of look at how many 3D printers do you have and how much printer filament do you have and how much can you go through that with your funding. And so the kids love the 3D printing, but there's sometimes you got to kind of trust me, you got to kind of be a little,
got to draw the line in the sand sometimes.
Yeah, a little selective.
Okay, next question, and I think you touched on this a little bit, but we can dive a little bit more into it. Is Fusion 360 appropriate for a collegiate environment?
I think so. I think it's one of those things that, yeah, I taught it actually. My first kind of teaching with Fusion 360 was at my local community college. So that was in spring of 2020. So when I knew that before, so from January to March, I taught an 8-week course, and it was a mechanical graphics class, and we used Fusion for it. That was my first actually kind of, because I knew the following school year, the 2020 to 21 school year, that we were going to be using it in the high school. So I kind of did that. That was like my test group, so to speak. I had about 8 or 9 varying age levels of people, everybody from somebody who was right out of high school, 18, 19 years old, to a gentleman who was actually a parent of one of the teachers that was my age, and he was in his 60s. So, I mean, we had some, people that were, just, I mean, all over, all age ranges. And so, and the reason why that parent was taking the course, he wanted to learn Fusion 360. He was an engineer, and he wanted to learn Fusion, and he was coming to night classes just because he knew me and he wanted to learn Fusion. And so, so it was definitely, and he had some awesome projects that we did. So I think for a collegiate level, I think it's definitely appropriate.
Perfect. And kind of building off of that same type of idea. So you have students who've learned Inventor. You've now kind of transitioned into Fusion 360. Do you find that your students grasp Fusion 360 more easily than Inventor, or Inventor more easily than Fusion 360? What's kind of been the balance that you've noticed between those two programs?
It's been interesting because I would have assumed that, I'll be honest, it would have been one of those things. The students that learned Inventor, I thought they would have been, no, I don't like Fusion. I want to stick with Inventor. This is what, this is kind of what I'm comfortable with. This is what I know. And actually it's kind of been well received. Like, students actually have told me that they feel like Fusion is a little bit cleaner of like an environment or like an interface. So they feel like things are easier to find. They think it's
Mhm.
a little bit more intuitive sometimes, just the way it's all organized and everything. It helps, believe it or not, it helps. The big thing they say is that the icons look the same. So like from Inventor, like the extrude icon looks the exact same from Inventor as it does in Fusion. So they really, that kind of stuff really makes a big difference to them. But yeah, I'm kind of surprised because actually we did have, like I said, the seniors that I had were all Inventor trained. We had about 3 or 4 days back here probably about a month ago where we were without internet at our school. And
Wow.
so we didn't have internet. And, so I kind of was joking. I said, yeah, so this is what it was like to be in high school in like the early, 2000s or, late 90s, which is of course I'm dating myself there
Right.
here, but so and the kids are like, what, and so but when we didn't have the internet, we couldn't get onto Fusion. So
Mhm.
I ended up, because so that way we didn't get behind. I said, okay, well, let's use Inventor because we could still run Inventor on that case. But the kids actually when I got them back into Inventor, when we got the internet back up, they went right back to Fusion. I mean, I was kind of surprised. They were like, they kind of didn't even go back to looking in
No
Inventor.
skipping a beat. There's a
Yeah.
nice transition.
Yeah.
Awesome.
They did their one. Yeah. They did their one design in Inventor and they were like, okay, yep, that was good to walk down memory lane. But, you know, they enjoyed the Fusion a lot. So.
Love that. One of the questions that came through, you mentioned networking is a big resources that you can use, and you're very connected with Project Lead the Way. How do I join Project Lead the Way? Is that helpful for networking purposes for engineering educators?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of to me, Project Lead the Way, yeah, is there's a little bit to joining it. There's a little bit to it. So obviously, to be part of the PLTW network, you would go through and join. You'd have to start looking at implementing PLTW curriculum in your classroom. And of course there's usually you have to be kind of involved with your school, and there's some cost associated with it,
Mm.
obviously. But as far as the people that you find, like some of the names of the guys that I listed on the resources, they're PLTW people, but we don't care, and same with me. As I mean, we'll talk to anybody
Mm.
who is willing. We're not going to go through and wall off, nope, we don't talk, we only talk to PLTW people. So when you start reaching out to some of us, and just like Corey Duzan and Mark McAllister and Brian Bobbitt, those three guys, those are all really good contacts that to me, they're colleagues of mine that I kind of hold up here, so it's one of those things that if you contact them, they're going to give you some names of people too, of say, hey, why don't you contact this person,
Mhm.
or get it, try this person. And so and we'll suggest people. I mean, it's always kind of the good thing. So to me, it's like, is it always necessary to get into Project Lead the Way? I think it depends on what school and your environment and everything, but to me, Project Lead the Way is a fantastic program. But sometimes there's just some schools that it may not be, a right fit for them to go
Mm.
into that, if they, for whatever reason. There can be a multitude of reasons of why, but obviously, I believe in it. It's been a really great thing at our school. And so, and to me, I think the best part about it is that network.
Awesome. I love that. I think that's super valuable as well. And I love that the options are open, right? Whether you're a Project Lead the Way school or not, I think there's a lot of connections that can be made for sure.
Yeah.
Well, those were all the questions that we had come in, and we're just about out of time. So Craig, I wanted to give you a chance to share any final thoughts that you had.
Yeah, I just appreciate everybody that's come to this webinar, and kind of looking at whether implementing it or transitioning, because it's one of those things that, to me, the only way we kind of start to see progress is to go through and to kind of look at changing along with things, because I really believe Fusion 360 will become kind of the future for Autodesk as they continue to pour a bunch of resources into it. It's a great program, and it's going to continue, I think, to only get better. And so, I just applaud everybody to go through that is willing to come on here and learn more about it, and just kind of, look at transitioning. So to me, it just shows, that we have dedicated educators out there that are trying to learn new things and trying to, do the best for their students. And so, it definitely makes me feel very, very proud to be part of, a group like that, that we see everyone is trying to do the best and not just kind of saying, well, I've done this for so many years and I'm just gonna stick with it, and kind of go there. That we're actually looking to move forward. So, but
well, we appreciate you being a pioneer in that space. And I know that I've seen comments in the chat already about teachers who've really appreciated the information that you shared. And we will, of course, be sharing the slides that you've created because I think everyone wants those links and the information. So we really appreciate you doing that and taking the time to put those together for us. I just wanted to call out, we have one more session before our Autodesk Academy has wrapped up for the month. So next week we will be having a special session dedicated to women in engineering and how to be creating a more inclusive environment for your female students. So we would encourage you to be able to join that session as well. Please feel free to join us. It'll be the same time next Wednesday. If you have any additional questions, feel free to send them to me. I'm happy to connect you with Craig, or if you have questions about the certification as well, we would be happy to have you connected with a member of our Certiport team. So I'll go ahead and drop my information here into the chat so that everyone can see that. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly or to send those over in response to our follow-up email that we'll be sending out with a link to the recording. So thank you, Craig. Thank you everyone for being here with us. We really appreciate you, and we'll see you guys next week.